Welcome agents, have Eurogamer just revealed that photo mode will be coming in the Division 2 and what are Dark Zone passive perks. Today we are going to go over both of these, plus I just want to confirm some stuff you may have missed about the Division 2. If you enjoy this video, please hit the like button below and subscribe for Division and Division 2 content, and with that said, let's do this. Okay, so a couple of days ago, Eurogamer released a video titled 6 Things We Like About the Division 2 PvP. And as they were approaching the gate into the Dark Zone, this popped up. As you can see, this is about 52 seconds into the video, and it clearly states photo mode. Below this, it has 2 boxes with text as well. The first box says, use photo mode to capture an image and save it to your system's storage. Toggle between compose and modify to prepare your image. The next box says, use compose to rotate, offset, tilt and zoom the camera for the perfect shot. The camera can only move within a limited range of the agent. So, I don't think Eurogamer were meant to release this information, as every other creator's video that I've seen went through this exact same entrance to the Dark Zone, but none of them included this, so it would have been edited out by everyone else. So, what do you think of this news, agents? As a content creator myself, this is great news, because I can make truly custom thumbnails now. And I think as a whole, this was something the community wanted in the Division as well. So it does appear that the devs have really listened here. I think there were a couple of people who had installed some sort of software in the Division which allowed them to recreate this. But I want to say that Ubisoft banned them, but I could be completely wrong about that. The question that's been making the rounds in the community on social media since the revelation of this information is, will it be possible to use this feature in the Dark Zone? The overall consensus is no, it won't, because then the camera could be used possibly as a tactical advantage, maybe for reconnaissance purposes. The fact this came up as they were about to enter the Dark Zone was probably because this was the PvE Dark Zone introduction mission, before you can actually do PvP in the Dark Zone, but we just don't know at this point. Regardless, the introduction of this feature will surely please most of you, and if that's the case, let me know in the comments below or by liking the video. I think it will be a waste of this feature if it wouldn't be used in the Dark Zone, and I think the idea that this can't be used very far away from your agent, as suggested in the second piece of text, probably confirms that it wouldn't be able to be used for that purpose and simply will be used for the capture purpose. Moving on, and another big thing to be briefly talked about was passive perks within the Dark Zone. I don't think this is something that you probably heard of, at least not until this video. You may have, but it's not really been going around. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what this means. Well, I can tell you that we don't really know yet. I was watching a video uploaded by Paris, another content creator here on YouTube, titled The Division 2 Interview, Hands-on Gameplay, Details on the Dark Zone and PvP. In this video, both Terry Spire and Tony Sturtzel of Red Storm Entertainment were interviewed, where they discussed various aspects of the Division 2, and most of it was what we've learned over the last couple of days, but one thing that really stood out to me was around the 30-minute mark of the video. Tony Sturtzel said this, word for word: we haven't really talked much about it over the last couple of days, but we have passive perks that unlock in the Dark Zone rank, that you unlock as a player. He goes on to talk about these perks can be taken away from you if you lose ranks from being manhunt, for example, and being killed. He talks about how you might have these perks and will have to make a decision as to whether it's worth trying to get manhunt right now, as if you do and you fail, you may lose that perk once you level down. This was as much as they talked about, and they didn't really go into detail, but this had me really intrigued, as I've not heard anything about this within the community. Of course, in the Division, Dark Zone rank didn't mean all too much. Once you reach certain ranks, you gain access to certain safe houses, but once you reach level 75, you had access to all of them, and then it was just a case of reaching level 99 if you wanted. But there was no rewards. The idea of having perks once you reach certain levels, I think is a really good addition. It gives you something to grind for, but I do have concerns, and it all comes down to what these perks are and how they are balanced. The idea of having normalization in 2 of the 3 Dark Zones is to reduce the barrier of entry and encourage agents who hadn't been able to min-max their gear to go into the Dark Zone knowing that they won't be at a huge disadvantage. They will be on a level playing field to some extent with everyone else, pretty much. So, with this in mind, wouldn't perks for those who had invested the most time into the Dark Zone progression be a contradiction to this system? I guess it will all depend on what these perks are and how well they are balanced. For example, a perk that would decrease your rogue timer by 10%, or a perk that reduced the time to cleanse yourself on Manhunt like Banshee from the Division, these perks would be absolutely fine, as they would not impact the PvP aspect of the Dark Zone. Another perk could be an amount of inventory spaces for contaminated gear. So say for example we got 9 spaces on launch, maybe if you got a certain perk that would go up to 10 or up to 12. Something like that. If we got perks like this, then I think it would be fine. But I'm worried that perks could give you an advantage in PvP, and that could be a problem. Even something as minimal as like 10% reload speed would be a complete contradiction to the normalization within the Dark Zone, and to what the devs have been saying about inclusivity. Let me know what you think in the comments, agents, because maybe I'm thinking into this too much. I'm going to assume that as the devs have said about these perks, they will be coming, so with that in mind, what perks would you like as part of the progression in the Dark Zone? As I said, for me, any perk that could benefit the player that's not an advantage in PvP is fine. Of course, the perks will need to be good, otherwise the whole system falls apart. If players are not bothered about losing these perks, then they're not worth being there, so we'll have to wait and see. Okay, so that's the chunk of what I wanted to talk about in today's video, but there are some other things you may have missed from all of the information to come out recently, so I want to go over that with you guys. The first one is to do with contaminated loot within the Dark Zone. A lot of people didn't enjoy the Dark Zone within the Division, because you could spend a lot of time in there and pretty much come away with nothing useful. This was particularly a problem once you reached the endgame, so the devs have listened, and in the Division 2, the stats for your gear will not be rolled until the items have been extracted out, meaning the gear stats will be tailored to your specific level, which should ultimately fix the problem. This was great news to hear, because this was one of the biggest issues I personally had with the Dark Zone. Of course, there will be a point when you've fully min-maxed your gear with all the talents you want and your setup is perfect, and when and if this happens, this system won't work for you, but generally this will work for everyone, and it will certainly encourage me to go into the Dark Zone in the Division 2, especially when you consider this is an endgame activity and being treated like one, so I'm expecting the best loot to drop here along with the raids. On the topic of endgame Dark Zone, the devs reiterated on many occasions within the dev interview that the occupied Dark Zone is the endgame Dark Zone, and they hinted at there possibly being a lot more danger than we know about so far. I'm probably clutching at straws here, but I really think we might see hunters or NPCs similar within the Dark Zone, in the occupied Dark Zone this is. This is of course speculation, but I really couldn't help but notice how often they mentioned that the occupied Dark Zone is an end game activity, and that we haven't seen everything at this point. If you've watched any of the recent gameplay or managed to play the Division 2 yourself, you're probably fully aware that the movement is very different to that of the Division. The general consensus is that the movement feels a lot slower, clunkier, albeit much smoother than the Division. You'll be glad to know that the devs are fully aware of this and they intend to fix this before launch. And this is really good news, because I too felt that the movement wasn't quite right, and that could be because it's not, or we've not had enough time to get used to it. I suspect the reasons why the movement is vastly different is to stop the chicken dancing and very unrealistic movement within the Division. But as I said, the devs have noticed this problem, and it is something they are going to be fixing within the Division 2, so what you've seen about the movement so far I would take as a grain of salt. I suspect the movement is going to be more similar to the Division, but also very different. A few other things to note are that you won't require Xbox Gold or PlayStation Premium service in order to play the introduction missions into the Dark Zones. And these introduction missions don't have to be done as part of the campaign, if that makes sense. You can do them basically at any time. If you didn't know, clans will have a maximum of 50 members, but can support up to 4 characters per person, meaning you can technically have 200 different characters as part of one clan. If you decide to switch from your main character to an alt, for example, you will still gain XP towards your clan and the clan objectives. Clans will be covered in more detail at a later point. The devs have confirmed that you will be able to engage in PvP before you reach level 30. They have not confirmed what level you have to be in order to engage in PvP, or if you'll have to reach a certain campaign mission before you can. And again, I'm sure this will be confirmed at a later stage. So there you are, agents. I hope you enjoyed today's video. There is so much information circulating about the Division 2 since the embargo was lifted, and it is a little overwhelming, even for me. The point I have talked about today has barely been talked about at all, so it's likely you've missed these amongst all the gameplays and all the other stuff on YouTube right now. Whilst I will be covering all of the really important stuff, like Dark Zone, PvP and PvE, I will also be attempting to uncover stuff no one is talking about, so you agents are firmly in the loop about what's coming. I hope you appreciate that I won't always be the first to cover the main topics, but I will always cover them, and more of course. With that said, your support as always is amazing. I want to thank each and every one of you. Until the next one, epic out.